Hey guys, it's Brian Azrael, Hebrew Hearts. We'll be here with the air conditioner. It's really hot in this car. So I've got a lot of friends who are prophetic, or they have what we call revelatory gifting. And that basically means everyone has some level of revelatory gifting. Most of us are like that old TV with the wood grain and the little orange dial and 3 channels. But there are some people who were born with a satellite dish, either cable box, sometimes a satellite dish, or they can get multi-hundreds of channels, or without so much interference as we have. Because a lot of us, like I said, is that little wood grain TV with the antenna. You climb on the roof to turn the antenna, and you get a little better signal than you did before, but there's like a limit on it. But some people are like a satellite. They're born with it. They're born with this extra ability to hear that some of us don't have. They hear better for themselves. They hear better for others. If they're prophetic, if they're a seer, they actually experience things. They will feel things physically. They will smell things. They will hear things and see things. Sometimes taste things. And sometimes they even go places we don't. And this gifting's really hard to learn in our modern church environment, because like you're in ancient Israel, there's a Torah, there's the scriptures, and this is like no one disputes. This is what God's law says. This is what God's word says, and there's no confusion on it. Like Isaiah 8:20, it talks about those who speak not according to the book those who speak not according to the Torah and the testimony, there is no light in them. But everybody agreed what the Torah, the instructions were. Everyone agreed what God's instructions were, and everyone agreed the testimony. Everybody's on the same page. So there's the same measurement for everybody that came with prophetic gifting. There was always the same measurement. There's always some consistent theology. There's the same leadership, because there weren't 55,000 denominations. And there's the same testimony. There's the same, God made the world in 7 days. God did this, God did that, God did all these things. God appointed this person. There wasn't massive confusion about doctrine, about who's a leader, about which gifts are which, about what laws apply and what don't. So it was a much easier time to discern who's real and who's false, who's speaking correctly, who isn't. And there weren't 55,000 YouTube prophets. Everyone had a screening process too. You didn't wake up one day, get on YouTube, claim yourself a prophet, make a Facebook profile, and you're a prophet, and that's it. And you had to do something to be recognized nationally, not just say you are. And also there's interpersonal communications, interpersonal relationships, where there is some people that live daily life with this person claiming to be a prophet. And they have been there around their entire lives, because people didn't move towns every 20 minutes. They're a whole town full of people that could verify that this happened or this didn't happen. There was leadership that's consistent, that's recognized, that's national, that could verify things. It's like when Yeshua came, they sent the Pharisees to ask him questions to see if he was actually the Messiah, because they actually screened people back then. And when John the Baptist was born, miraculously, his mother was like 80 years old, and his father came out of the temple, not just the local church, he came out of the temple, the wonders of the world, the national temple for the entire nation, mute. He came out, and he's supposed to give a prophecy or a prayer, and the man couldn't talk. So since the birth of John the Baptist, everyone could verify these events because they're nationally known. So there was the screening process of people you grew up with, the town you knew. There was people appointed to come and verify people that claiming to be prophets and teachers and such. And there was national leadership that was consistent. Everyone agreed who the leader is. And the scriptures were considered consistent. You either believed them or you didn't. There weren't 55,000 interpretations of this and that. Because when you verify prophetic gifting, you use it by the scriptures. But the scriptures hadn't been twisted to the point we have now. And there's different translations and versions and things left out. And goofy doctrines popping up everywhere as much. So it was easier to verify someone's prophetic gifting back in the day. But the big thing they had that we don't have, they had a school of the prophets. And didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm a prophet. If you were born with that gifting, you still had to be trained. Samuel was born with that gifting, and he still had to go to the high priest and live with the high priest to learn to develop his gifting, because he's hearing this voice in his head saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And Samuel has no idea who is talking to him. He thinks a human being is talking to him because he's a child, chronologically and spiritually at that point. And a lot of us stay chronological children because we don't get fathered spiritually. But he heard a voice. He didn't understand it. And thankfully there was someone there that could explain to him, that's God talking to you, and teach him how to use that gifting. A lot of times now we don't have that. The gifts of God are our repentance. There's a lot of prophetic people that weren't born in church. There's a lot of prophetic people didn't go to church until they were 40 after they've been using the prophetic gifting for 30 years. And you still have the satellite. They still have the satellite. They still get signals most of us don't pick up, even if they're not in church. Even if they never read a Bible, they're still getting signals. Now, some of those signals are from God. Some of those are from the enemy. Some of those are just picking up on other people's souls and emotions and things. But they're always picking up signals all the time. And they're born with it. They really can't shut it off without a whole lot of effort, destroy themselves. And a lot of people in mental institutions had that gifting, and not knowing how to handle it made them crazy. And a lot of people with addictions and things like that, they literally destroy themselves trying to shut it off because they don't know how to do with it. And a lot of people get chased out of churches that do have the gifting, and the church doesn't know what to do with it. A lot of people became witches because the church didn't know what to do with it. But people are born with this gifting. And if you can use it for good or bad or for yourself, but the gifting is ingrained, they're born with it. And the Bible is someone who was recognized as having that gifting, or they were dedicated to God as a child, and God gave them that gifting because of something their parents did. There was training for that. There's a school of the prophets mentioned numerous times. I think it was Elijah out with the school of the prophets, and they're chopping trees down to build a house or a school building. An axe head flies off, and Elijah's like, well, make it float, So the axe head floats. But they're at a school of the prophets where they learn to prophesy. Saul encountered the sons of the prophets playing music, and he got around them and started prophesying. But these were all recognized people that had the gifting, that were using it for God, and that were allowed to teach others. And if someone had that gifting, they were sent to the other people with the gifting to learn how to use it correctly. And a lot of people have this prophetic gifting, this revelatory gifting now. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to use it. Sometimes a church shuts them and tells them they're dabbling this or that. Some of them might be the psychiatric community is going to tell them totally schizophrenic. There are schizophrenics that are just schizophrenic or possessed, or they have a gifting and they get in a really goofy church, which thinks every time someone sneezes is a demon, and there's angels floating around doing cartwheels, and they get goofy with the prophetic. They can't tell the difference between prophecy and imagination. And sometimes these people with this gifting, they kind of go off on their own, try to learn how to use it. Their own. They look at YouTube videos, which has a lot of good source sometimes, but they find a New Age shop, or they have a Wiccan friend that's like, oh, I see artists too, or I have visions too, and the Wiccan community is the only people that accepts it, in their gifting, or the New Age community is the only people that accepts in the gifting, because you can't separate the person from the gifting as easily. If the person's there, the gifting's there, and you can't really say, I like you, but I hate your gift. They'll eventually have to go somewhere else. And unfortunately, the New Age community trains people with prophetic giftings. They make it a point to do that. The Wiccans train people with prophetic gifting. Church, not so much. You either walk in there fully ready to go, fully trained, and you slip up on one little detail and you're a heretic because you weren't trained. And they just want you to come in it's like expecting somebody to walk in the hospital with a PhD. And that's it. Until you get a PhD, don't show up. Don't mention you know anything about medicine. You just come in with a PhD. If they want to send people to medical school, they just want them to show up they want a doctor all on their own. And this has really train wrecked a lot of people with the prophetic gifting. So everybody's gifting needs training. We train evangelists, usually, somehow, some way. We train pastors. pastors are required to get degrees easily. We often train teachers. I went to seminary for like a year, utter failure at it, but we train teachers in our public school system at least. You go to college 6 years to be a teacher, you're working for free. Be a pastor, you go to seminary 4, 5, 6 years. Be an evangelist, usually somebody takes you under their wing and mentors you. Be an evangelist. To be an apostle, you've usually been a pastor for quite a while, but there was some pastor over that denomination that took you in and trained you to lead multiple churches instead of just one church. But if you have a prophetic gifting, you're just on your own. I mean, you're like come out of the womb knowing when God's talking, when he isn't, when it's the enemy talking. They would expect Samuel to be 5 years old and know that wasn't Eli saying, wake up, wake up. And Samuel, a modern Samuel at 5 years old, would have no Eli to go to. He just kind of wanders around his entire life with this stuff going on in his head, and the only people he knows that can tell him any answers at all are Wiccans. So he just kind of falls into that. Or his parents take him to a psychiatrist and give him some medication. Or the church chases him out and tells him to shut up. But the whole world would miss out on Samuel's gifting if at the time there was no one to train him and there was no one that knew what to do with it. And of course, the prophecy scriptures were tested by the book of truth. And the other problem is that people with prophetic giftings sometimes think everything they hear is God. And the schools of prophets will teach them discernment, but people with prophetic gifting, they can't often tell the Spirit of God from the spirit of the enemy, or the Spirit of God from their souls or someone else's souls, or they can't tell the Spirit of God from their own imagination. Just whatever pops in their head is God. And there is no consequence for that now. I mean, back in the day, if you were trained, you were proclaiming you're a prophet. Not that you have prophetic gifting, not that you think God says something, not that you have an inclination, but, prophet wasn't a national level, it's an office. It's not just a gifting, it's an office of a prophet. They would stone people because it's that serious a thing to say, God does say the Lord, when God didn't say it. That is the most serious thing in the universe. It messes up people's theology, it wrecks their faith, it breaks their heart, and it will turn them against the Creator. And then when God sends someone who actually does speak for him, no one's listening, because all these other people were false prophets. And that's where the church has gotten to today. Many churches, they've seen so many false prophets completely accepted that they reject the real ones. I don't have that gifting that I'm aware of, so sometimes I'm thankful for that, sometimes not, but I wish I heard clearer. But it's a very difficult gifting to have in our day and age, because there's so much deception around it, there's such a lack of training, and there's really no accountability for people that came before that just make stuff up, or they just talk out of their imagination, or like, Joseph Smith claimed to be a prophet, Muhammad claimed to be a prophet, and these people were speaking for Satan, but they claimed it was God. And that was allowed. It was tolerated. It was tolerated to the point that they developed movements and churches, per se, with millions and millions of followers because it's tolerated. Somebody could have stopped Joseph Smith, way before he got to St. Louis and did all the crap he did. Sorry, St. Joseph, Missouri. Not St. Louis. Before he got to St. Joseph and did all the stuff he did, somebody could have stopped him a long time before that, but the church was already splintered. There was no central leadership. They could say, no, you need to quit. There's no agreed upon interpretations of scriptures. There's no unified body. There's thousands of denominations already when it came about. So there's no one organized enough with enough authority to stop him, to say, no, you're not coming here or anywhere else, because the church was so splintered. There's 10,000 shepherds, and one doesn't like you, that one put up with you. Or you can hop from town to town to town, saying whatever you want, and no one else knows what you did the last town you were at. So this lack of accountability hurts the new prophetic people, because they grow up thinking it's okay just to say, God said, thus saith the Lord, left and right, without understanding, without accountability, without understanding how serious that is. So that's another problem with not having any kind of centralized training for prophetic people. But who would train these people who would train the trainers? Who would teach the teachers? Who would lead the leaders if there's no agreed upon qualifications? There's no determining test or factor of who actually has it. We're so afraid to offend somebody by saying either, hey, that's not from God, or saying you're not from God, or you have a gifting, you're just not developed in it enough to train anybody else. Like you watch the X-Men, all these kids are born with this gifting, and they're not exactly sure how. It's a special gifting. They all have a special gifting, but each of their giftings is slightly different. And Charles Xavier, Professor X, takes them in to develop this gifting. I always view that as prophetic movement. They have to be taken in to develop this gifting they have. And I think that movie really resonated with my generation because it's very fatherless generation. And even the church movement, a lot of people have giftings, but no one taught them how to use these giftings. So they're like those mutant teenagers running around with this special skill to do this, that, or that. But there's no one there to teach us how to use it, and it scares most people or puts them off. And character-wise, we haven't really been trained or developed to have the character to handle the gifting, and just as far as the gifting itself. Sometimes it hurts people. We use our gifting in a bad way. Like the kid in the X-Men that shoots fire, he could accidentally torch somebody because he didn't know how to use his gifting, so he just shuts it off. He can just shut it. He might just be inclined to shut it off because no one ever trained him how to use it. So I think the church really needs some Professor Xaviers of sorts to come along, and for all the giftings, most especially the prophetic gifting and the seer gifting. But even for someone like me, the teaching gifting, I used to be a Gnostic, not agnostic, like I don't know if God exists or not, but Gnostic, like it's a first century movement. First century heretical cult movement based on false scriptures, but it was a movement in the first century. But I have a teaching gifting, but wasn't really trained in how to use it. So I was teaching goofiness because no one trained me how to use my teaching gifting, and that hurt people. And there's no one to put their foot down, and there's no unified leadership in the church to say, no, that's absolutely false doctrine. There wasn't a lot of people there to do that. And if one church thinks you're false doctrine, you can go down the street and start all over it. It takes them 6 months to figure it out, and then you can just go to another one and damage all these people because there's no unified body to say, look, no, this person's not teaching correctly. In Paul's days, you had to have a letter of reference. You couldn't just show up somewhere and say, hey, look, I'm a prophet. You had to have a letter of reference. And these people would verify that you are legit. Some churches still do that, thankfully. But you had to have a letter of reference. You couldn't just show up. You had to have the people that sent you verify you are who you say you are, and you can do what you can say you can do. And maybe we need to get back to that too. But we need a school for all the giftings. But we most definitely need someone that trained the prophetic people. And if you are prophetic, John Paul Jackson has some really good teaching videos on YouTube. I don't agree with everything the man taught, but he was commissioned to teach prophetic people how to use their gifting. So it's John Paul Jackson on YouTube. Has some really good stuff. I put some as twilightparables.com is my dream interpretation website. I put a lot of his videos on there if you want to find them quickly. And if you have a prophetic gifting, just pray God sends someone into your life who also has that gifting, who is more mature in the gifting and the spirit and more mature in character than you are, and also practices good doctrine, all those things, to teach you how to use it, and that you would use it for the good, not the bad. Because if you're a prophetic person, if you use it for the enemy, you're a psychic. You use it for God, you're a prophet. Well, you have the gifting of a prophet. You're not appointed a prophet until, that's a church position as a prophet. But or if you use it for yourself, you probably end up being a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor or one of these kind of people. But if you use it for the enemy, you end up being a psychic. If you use it for God, you end up being a prophet. You use it for yourself, you're probably going to be a psychiatrist or therapist, but you're not born a psychic. It's a gifting. You have a revelatory gifting. What you do with it makes you a psychic or a therapist or a prophet. It's what you do with it. But the gifting itself is not a psychic gifting. Psychics are people that use a prophetic gifting for the enemy. They turn it into the wrong station. They turn the satellite into a bad station. You can have a satellite dish and you can watch like God TV or the church channel or whatever, or you can turn it into watch HBO Skinamax. And the satellite is not bad. The satellite just gives you access. Which signal you tune into is what makes it good or bad. So don't hate yourself for having the satellite. Choose for yourself which one you will serve. Will you tune into the dark channel, or you turn to the light channel, or you just tune into the worldly channel. But that's the problem. Is not the satellite. The problem is the station you tune into. So I hope that helps you guys with some understanding of that. And TwilightParables.com is my dream interpretation site. And if you go to that, you'll see some links that might help you. And if you'd like to donate, that'd be very helpful too, because I have to pay for that site every month. But I hope that helps you guys. Feel free to reach out if you need anything. So.